started back up. It started back up here. So I'm like, I had to get the time to do it. The time and the team behind it. It's so good to see you, Tisa. Oh my God. Oh, I guess I'm sorry. How are you? Hi. Oh my God, it's so great. Brings everybody. Oh, he brought people. Oh, yes, please. Okay, we have to catch up with everything. We definitely have to catch up. It's so good to see you this evening. I'm sorry I said Jordan. I was thinking more. It's okay. You got a million students. But I know. I saw it when you passed me there, and I was like, when we were outside. Oh, I didn't even see you. I'm like, oh my God. Hey, I was wondering if I was anybody else out here. Yeah, I know, because you're some cohorts out now. Just about everybody behind you is also gone. Everybody behind me is gone now. I was gone in 2018. Yes, it feels like yesterday. Whoa. It feels like yesterday. 2018. 2018. It's good to be on CalArts soil, especially because everything was closed in 2020. I know. It's nice to. This is my first event. Woo. Let me go to Altadena. Yeah, I'll see you when it's over. I'll see you when it's over, Tisa.
Hi everyone. We're going to begin. If we can continue to sit, thank you. And it's very nice always when this is in the front row. It's terrible to read in the front row. To begin, I would like to do with a land acknowledgement, and it feels like a small gesture in relationship to what's needed. A kind of incommensurate gesture, but also a gesture of beginning. And I would like to acknowledge the historical Tataviam tribe, whose land we're on right now. And it was an enormous piece of land, and it was taken from the Tataviam about 170 years ago, in session, taken in a thing called Session 286. I think it's nice, I hope it's not empty, but I think it's nice to name the tribes as they are listed on that document. The Buena Vista, the Carice, the Castake, the Holneok, the Holocame, the Senahuao, the Sogon, the Tejon, the Tosia, and the Uva. We do these land acknowledgements as a way of beginning to decolonize our world and our history. It's my pleasure today to welcome Doug Kearney, who's here to read from his new work, Sho, which is his 7th book of poetry. His best known book until now, at least in my orbit, has been Buck Studies. But we learned last week that Sho is one of the 5 finalists for the National Book Award. Is also a sound artist and opera librettist with 4 operas under his belt. He's a product of CalArts, but also of Howard University, a preeminent historically Black college with a major role in Black power and civil rights movement. With a sharp eye, a sharp ear, and a sharp tongue, Douglas is able to slice and dice words not with knives, but with pens and keyboards, and perhaps most importantly, with his own body, his mouth, and his vocal cords. His work is in equal parts performative and graphic, hitting crooked licks with straight seeming sticks. I can't do it as well as he can. With content that is also performative and graphic. His work does not seek to reassure you or lull you into quietude. Embodying equal parts of Henry Louis Gates' concepts of signifying, it's pugnacious and pugnacious. The pun is his primary mode of transport, and fun, not to be outdone. Pugnacious and pugnacious, but also pugilistic. He's been called a brilliant mind, a sonic genius, and a maker of epistomal lollipops. Douglas Kearney.
Vaccinated performer, so take that off. And this distance is probably pretty good because I tend to do a lot of projectile spitting. Terrible sight for our time. Matthias, thank you so much for inviting me back. You know, this place has been really important and special to me. I started here as a grad student in 2002 in what was then called the MFA in writing. And I was able to adjunct for about a year, and then I was able to get full-time work here until 2018. So much of my artistic practice has been informed by this place. And some of the people in this room, my brother Dallas is back there, and so much of what I think through is because of music that he shared with me and talked to me about, and never treated me like a little kid when it came to listen to the music that he was interested in. And that has had perhaps one of the most profound impacts on my work. And so thank you guys. I also want to thank Rosa and the crew for getting me started up here. I'm making sure that I try to get to everyone so I can demonstrate my true gratitude. But sometimes I just get kind of wrapped up in what I'm about to do. So I'm going to start with the title poem from Sho. Again, it's our veins in the house. Also more gin. People up in here. All right, so I'm going to start with the title poem from Sho. That's all of the sentimentality, kindness going on tonight. That's not why I'm here. Damn it. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you mentioning quietude, because I have for a long time threatened to write a really like shady ass poem called NWQ, Niggas with Quietude. But I haven't felt that shady yet. This is the title poem from the collection called Sho, and it is a product of CalArts. I taught a course here called Pattern, Constraint, and Sound. It was a course in which students created new literary forms, and new poetic forms specifically. And this is a form called a torsion, as created by Indigo Weller, who's now alum, the MFA, creative writer. I think all you need to know about this is sometimes people need people to be a thing when they're looking at that thing, but even that thing, there might be that thing, they need that to be that thing, and all of this thingness makes that thing a thing, and that's a real thing. So I just want to that's what you need to know before we start. Sho. Some need some body or more to ape sweat on some site. Bloody pearl or dirty spit, hot up for to show who gets eaten. Rig body up, bow, bow, to breeze a lazy chick, and sway to Griggs' good fiddling. Pine deep, dusk a spot where stood by. Thus they clap when I mount bonk, jink up the lectern, bow to say it's all good. We gathered, withstood, bins of dives, deeper, darker, they clap as I get down, sweat highlights my body. How meets thy bloody look fresher for show. Being I got deep spit out my mouth, a rigid red brine, bloody melon, ha! No sweat, choking, nobody knows the trouble. Reek full of Odeus, show, wild fix, dispatch, spit in tragedy's good eye. This one's called Cheap for gobblers, then bow housefully. They can't be misunderstood. Hang no tie or deep, make my tongue a poem. What's the gift? My good songbox? The gift! Jingle nickels from deep down my craw. They clap, I so jolly, stood on that bank. Body picked over blood, Rato, rats and sweat, brow syndrome, spit out a sax bell, rig, a negrocious show of fields. For show, sweat equals work, bloody, a pot of body. I stay dip, show, never run dry, rig. Furiously I spit, outstretched feet, lines tick, ha, 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 good one that eye is foul, deep but not outstood, shining dim, they clap, waves, slapping holes, deep, don't mean sunken, goods, not yummy, right? Bow, blanched with foam, jigs, this one's called, they clap, barrow, so much deep ends upon dead, I stood on that bloody rise of sweet body. There you is too. Sweat it lets. They clap, right? Some ass post spit to lip. I said, shut up. So I'm gonna do stop upstaging. Appreciate that shit. All right, so I'm gonna do this here, and I'm gonna pull it up onto the screen at the time that I do it, so it's almost like a trance. Let's do that. That's where it is. So this is a poem from Buck Studies called "That Loud Ass Colored Silence Protest," yeah, I'll do this one. It's a oldie but a goldie. That loud ass colored silence, protest. We over in hand, we are whole like we'll someday. We are overcome. We are overcome someday. Someday. We are over. We free. We are all afraid someday. We are is what the wanted, unwanted don't what. We are overcome. Shout it day hand in hand. Oh deep, oh deep, oh deep, oh deep, oh deep, oh I what? Oh deep, I oh deep, oh we are free, we are free, deep, ain't we are free, we are free, ain't we are free, we are free, ain't free, we are free. Walloped up into dream, upended and marched into house to the knit elbows or garden of a million clenched buds. The double box redoubles into sync, down and sinks into that old silencing right. Shh, we are over, we are not over. Someday. Hashtag Black Lives Stammer. Black Lives Stutter. Black Lives says no. Fireman points the water. Night and day, policemen work. Hashtag Black Lives, yeah. I can't, hashtag Black Lives murder. What we want is to not be your what's unwanted, your what's or your un. We want what's what to be unyours. We want you to want what you want to want. What we want is to not be your what's unwanted, your what's or your un. We want what's what to be unyours. We want you to want what you want to want. What we want is to what we want. What night and day, policemen work. Why won't you?
Hey, Doug, what are you doing? Well, Doug, I'm glad you asked. It's a brand new dance. Really? I've never seen that dance before. Oh, yeah. It's the dance sensation that's sweeping some parts of the nation. Really? Well, how do you do it? Oh, it's easy. I'll show you my brand new dance.
This is called Do the Backseat Jam. Stop there, fam, and jump to the brand spanking. Back again, you know how it goes. Throw your hands in the air when the lights on, maestro, raise the baton, and swing till you feel it. The beat was taking over the street to the club. When I say, you say, ah! It thumps. Let me see those hands. All the people in the be quiet, get down on the floor like you know. This will be the short shot. Hit, switch, track, 3 close. You better put your hands. Get ready, brother. You ain't ready for it. You gotta listen up. It's just as easy as falling off a countdown. 3, do it till it's done. To the 2, the 1's in blue. Show them what you said to do. The 0's in brown. To the back. To the back. Now you right in the jam. I recognize the plight. It's like we applaud because we want to celebrate the performance, but sometimes the contest, like, police brutality. It's its own kind of brand new dance. Maybe, like we collaboratively write that. And the extended deluxe edition of Sho, which maybe we'll call Show Right, or Showing Up, or Show and Tell, or maybe something like that. Just so we can get some more streams. As Kendrick Lamar would say, out the listener. Maybe we can add that one as a dance bonus track and extend it. I like that. That's something to think about. And it encourages me. You're the stars. Gosh, I'm full of love. So let's do a poem about it. Love. And not ironically. All right, so this poem is called Say the Sacred Words, which is a line from an Amiri Baraka poem called Comet. And the names that are the sort of subtitles of each section are the names first of my daughter, then my son, then my wife. Say the sacred words. Ka, li, la. Break the lake's thin shell, and out you up to ready, steady wait. As troop fruit of more sweet than that, where lake cobbles pebbles, and just there's silver to flute through. Elijah. Wait, curlew of suddenly cry abates, pearls to hunched gust sways, the gate frame to where time lay, though the gate won't shut. You drink a little, here it's cold, drink, it's good. Me, cold. And then go, not yet though, yeah, cooling thing, can menthol me, till that warm, that hot, round, that teetering lantern, my lit tongue cups still. And this is sort of an expanded love poem. It's the newest poem in this book. Some of the poems in this book date back to 2008, but there is a poem from 2020, and you can tell because it's about that thing we all know about, right? Which is the Capitol insurrection. No, that's 2021. And that also wasn't insurrection. That was just good old harmless fun and patriotism. Because you could tell because people were wearing flags. Not all of them were from this country. I think that's very, very chauvinistic to just associate patriotism with just the U.S. There were flags with snakes on them. There were flags with Trump on them. And so patriotism in general, that was what was happening there. That was a pageant. A pageant of patriotism. It's give me a sec. When I think of the just makes me want to sing the national anthem. Deutschland, Deutschland, All right, so this is a love poem called Close. The funk recall as most, like, oh, I want to say one thing. So we live in St. Paul, but the Dakota call that area a place of white cliffs. And you'll know why, it's that you drive through downtown St. Paul, the white cliffs are still there. But anyway, close. The funk recall, as most black shit, once was and is sickness. Fool, how much oogie in your GB? Our black asses been hunkered in this house, this now transitional hood. We steal away where some call white cliffs. Fool, how much mini in your pie? Baby girl's coughs been wet. She's set at trilling what pops. We spit out this kitchen, bags up of chicken, bones to ripe bins, and the alley till soup tints no bowls. It smells close, says in, for funky. Sure, since winter's steady eavesdropping, greedy Tom peeping for 5 months near. Now, Ma's newest facial tincture seems foolish out our lone loop. Fool, how much acai in your argan? What we can't eat off love, even out brown hands done. Thus, I'm gone to the market. Once my son shadowed, copped kale, potatoes, milk, cereals, though now he must stir in-house in his blossom of musk there, where we close, minding my gap to explain neighbors, drilling, what have I touched? My hands stay on, ashes, fool, how much Jergens in your palmers? Off the store, they broke to dank ass home, got them bleach wipes, yeah, that push to the cut, we keep some sickness out. I'm gonna do some more. So there's a note in there about my daughter trilling what pops, and she is like deep into contemporary pop music, and she's like there for it. But one of the things that Nicole and I have been doing is like, okay, let's just make sure that we're always like slipping some other music in there too. I hear something. So I'm gonna do this next poem because about one of my favorite songs, and it's dedicated to one of my favorite people who talked about this very song on a program called Heat Rocks. That song is the Emotions Best of My Love, and that person is Tisa Bryant. This, Sonic move the clapping sound back to me. Me! Thank you. Like Usher, I do it all for the claps. Anyway, so this poem is called and true. All right, so this poem is called Ow! Because in that song, there is this moment, the entire song, maybe even the entire history of soul music and R&B and disco existed to get to this one moment in this song. It is ridiculous, and it is the word Ow! And that moment, it sounds like as if, imagine, imagine if the voice of a black woman could turn into a chrome pipe from a muscle car in Detroit. But instead of being smoke and it was the future of high notes, the future of high notes hadn't even gotten there yet. But now, because the Emotions Best of My Love, they combined to make this harmony that could actually probably split a Tyrannosaurus Rex in half if they were running around in the future, which they would be. So this poem is called Ow. It's about that moment. When I go via the emotions chromey, ow! my spine antennas over to its kind of siren. They're a beacon species, a dead stick space freighter jammed in raw cosmos, pings it out, yawn, black unlimited, a million parsecs ascended, call myself keyed to the code, jackpot chime tolling all the deep monies. Their owl defibrillates, catches me walking my cardboard sleep, that keen, unlikely hard leisure. I mean to get to rigorous understanding. When my mind isn't a box, isn't assorted pins. Don't know from their sound as mine by birth. I work it, at it, I'm a student, have it, to it. My spine cantilevers, pelvic anchor, my head cut loose to the shoots of their high suddenness. I come to get my head around what I'm in. It goes up, it goes up. I'm clutching its string along. When I go, that owl because it hurts doing miracle business. That owl because black women out there named 24-karat drudge. That owl because ecstatic agon, what it is a skin full of stars, so a divinity pinched in lament. I open my mouth, a bootlegged falsetto, bid for dubious trinity, a chord, I go courting dissonance by way of my striving, a sable note up yonder, black as an afro's liquid cord. I'm coughing up wax, I'm coughing up feathers, green seawater, their luminously dark disc belting my glinting sub-terra ink. All right, so I'm gonna do another new one, and yeah, this one is actually for my brother and I. A couple of things to know about this. So, like, we grew up in Altadena, which is now a place that neither one of us could afford to live. But it's home. It's home. And there's a reference in here. You've never heard this poem, seen this poem before now. So, there's a reference in here about what you would wish to happen. At least something you told me you wish to happen. Like, if I'm responsible for making sure that you get up there all right, I'm supposed to put the ashes on Christmas Tree Lane. Right? So that's a reference to it. Christmas Tree Lane is this mile-long row of deodar trees. And every year, except for 1 year during World War II, they put Christmas lights on it. And every year, they're also like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it this year, y'all. We need funds again. I don't know. It's like, yeah, they're up. It's almost like Advent. It's almost like Altadena Adventists on the first day of Christmas. They say they can't afford to put up the Christmas lights, and then they just go and then they're there. So there's reference to that, but there's also reference to a couple of different singers. Again, there's Odetta. There is Nina Simone. There's also Zora Neale Hurston mentioned there, and I'm thinking of a performance of the song "Motherless Child." So, all right, almost gone. I wish I knew how not to know. Either my brother or I'll bury the other. Father, mother, dust variations, ill encore spun once more. Sometimes I feel like I'm not a simile, while motherless child's first verse unreels. Child goes gone a second. An eagle in the air. I never hear Odetta do. Just motherless, doubled on to almost gone. Someone's recording something ever. Is her eagle down somewhere? A needle drops. Sometimes I feels bird and sky an antithesis to Nina's. This dialectical, this is taxidermy. One's mountains freedom, others door. A motherless child a long way from home already, whether Birmingham or whether Odetta's Birmingham or our Deodar needle. Dina, free from, okay. Sorry, no, it's not done. I apologize. This is what happens when you try to be like the kids. You use your phone to read something, it changes all of the formatting, and Then you try to play it off like you could do it, but you're panicking the whole time. You're like, oh crap, what's happening to the second page? I think I could pull this off. It's like, no, you can't. You need to stop and move to your computer. Your exit. And you're like, oh man, that's messed up. This was like one of the few moments of like real emotional like tenderness of the entire thing. And that's when you're gonna do it? And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. What you gonna do about that now? And I'm like, well, look, man, like I'm trying to do something here. I'm getting emotional. I'm with my family. And I know why you do. I know why. I see, yes, because I thought it was in the middle of it. My aunts are here. And that's good. But when my brother and I lost our mother, they lost a sister. And just this last year, they also lost a mother. So I'm gonna start again, so I won't like mess it up. And I appreciate y'all bearing with me. All right. So this is for all of us. Almost gone. I wish I knew how not to know. Either my brother or I'll bury the other. Father, mother, dust variations, ill encore spun once more. Sometimes I feel like I'm not a simile, while motherless child's first verse unreels. Child goes gone the second, an eagle in the air I never hear or dare do. Just motherless, doubled onto almost gone. Someone's recording something ever. Is her eagle down somewhere? A needle drops. Sometimes I feels bird and sky in antithesis to Nina's. This dialectical, this is taxidermy. One's mountains, freedom, others dolor. A motherless child's a long way from home already, whether Odetta's Birmingham or our Theodore needle, Gina, for freedom or never mind. Will to adorn, Zora goes, double descriptive. I go low down in plain pine, I'll go down many versions, some dolorous moaning binds verses, motherless to almost some sideways for like, if my brother's almost an eagle in the air I am, he'd have me have him burned, almost gone. He would have me loose his ashes, almost Theodore needles, on Santa Rosa near the old house, all the high tall cedars, though I'm a long way from home. Crows crowd the forked sky. Thank you. Do a few more, and then I'm going to do some cuenta. So if you have cues, I'll try to provide you with aids, which sounds really dirty, but it was exactly exactly. All right, so let's do the next thing. On the next thing. All right. Oh, really? That was okay. All right. You can't touch this. Hey, Doug, what are you doing? It's the brand new dance. That's kind of fun. How do you do it? And what's it called? It's called the 6-foot jump down. And it's real easy to do. I'll tell you how. Everybody does it eventually. Back with the dusty, how we get it in, till the cut it loose, just like mama done. It all the way live and direct, you dead. On it like pops hit the floor to that old gritty sound. It's spinning in the party, get low, people in the groove, somebody scream! The rhythm rock till the lights go dark. Can't feel the tempo, better lay it back. Easy with the horns blow, you know the time. Dig it when you go to break down. Show them what you got, nobody's still standing up against the wall. Last call, all y'all, you peep. The beat fades to my peeps in black, don't wave. The hands drop, crisscross, look alive. Okay, all right, so this one, when I moved to Minnesota, Minnesotans are very proud of their winters. They're proud of them. They're proud of their winters the way like rappers are proud of coming from like really violent places. Because they feel like they can be like, have that polar vortex. You know, they feel like they can just look at anybody in the eyes. Like, although Minnesotans would probably be more like, what? So when I moved there, one of the favorite things for Minnesotans to say was like, how you like that winter? And I would look right back at the eye and I'd say something that you all know, which is, fire is a season, it's weather in California. Fire is weather. It is not a natural disaster, unless you think leaves falling off of trees is some blight. No, now fire is weather. In 2016, we had one of the big recent ones, the sand fire. Y'all might, some of y'all might remember that. At that time, my family and I lived in Saugus, and of course it's during summer, and I was taking the kids to the pool in our complex. And I think I had the most quintessential Los Angeles moment I've ever had. It's probably why I had to move, because I'd reached peak Los Angeles at that moment. And that was, we were walking to the pool. I saw the smoke. I looked, and I could see helicopters flying in front of the smoke. So I was like, that's far enough, we can still go swimming. Sandfire, or the pool, 2016. Chlorine and smoke lit our eyes. Since it was we swam while fire made a boxer's ear of sky. Sweet, let go the side. You'll be fine. You dove your violet ring from deepest cold. Let me worry while my Cairo blood slick guts just how it is. Oh, by the way, I found out that same summer that I had diabetes. So, like, there's a mention of a drug up in here called metformin. What you need? And that had the remarkable, anatomical effect on me that my digestive system and my ability to hold things that I have eaten and then process and we're going to get rid of had grown extraordinarily efficient, very efficient. And I felt like holding poop was like being a tin can full of soda that had just been shaken. And I had to teach with that. So anybody here, who might have seen, thankfully y'all have all cycled out. I don't think any of you might have been there for some of this, where I'd be like teaching, I'd be like, all right, y'all, so we're gonna put this film on for a minute. I want y'all to critique very closely what's happening in the film. And then I run, I go to the bathroom, and this is so terrible. And then I come back, like, okay, everybody, how you doing? Sandpaper back. This is way too much information, but just metformin. There's reasons why you should take care of your body and not eat so much sugar. There are reasons why you can have things that happen in your body that are not about eating sugar, but still do things to you that and metformin is mentioned in this poem. And every time I mention metformin in this poem, I make a little bit of chatter inside. So I might throw some extra metformin. You know, metformin. Metformin. What I said earlier about metformin being uncomfortable, really it made me feel very svelte. I mean, I was just like running around. I had so much energy, back and forth all day, losing weight. Metformin. Sometimes I think about that old, command from James Brown. give it up and turn it loose. Well, metformin is James Brown in a bottle. You just take some metformin and you will give it up and turn it loose. Metformin. Metformin. METFOR, men. METFOR. Hey, you, get out my body. Okay, all right, so here we go. Sand, fire, or the pool 2016. Chlorine and smoke lit our eyes. Since it was, we swam while the fire made a boxer's ear of sky. Sweet, let go the sigh. You'll be fine. You dove your violet ring from deepest cool. Let me worry while my K-Roll blood, slick guts, just how it is. Know how far the burning by, how small those first responders fly at soot-bruised afternoon skin. My guts cracked slick knuckles, metformin putting work in deep. Your catch at how did it start? I've told you, yellow weather lights the litter, oil spatters, common salt water. Don't breathe outside for days. Copters ring around and still to slow the flower. You gobble water, and what fire's gonna eat? Eat sweet, yes, although not ours this time, because let me worry over burning, over drowning, how molasses blood loiters, how we go below what just happens. Hold your breath and deeper, deeper till you, daughter, daughter, come up clutching what is under, come back striking what's above. All right, and I'm gonna end with I'll end with this new one. It's one that I wrote a little while ago, like earlier in the summer, back in the summer, I should say. And you know, it's new. It's called Erros, ERROS. And the basic premise of this is that you know, we have that concept, Eros, EROS, you know, kind of rooted in Roman mythology, and then you know, kind of appropriated from the Greeks, and then sort of transformed remix into Eros, right? And that principle of sort of like sensual love, you know, that's we've used this concept now to speak to things that suggest sexuality. Well, so I'm thinking about this. I was thinking about this a couple of years ago, because I worked on this project for the 1619 project, and many of y'all have heard that project. It is one of the years that people cite as being when you know, that great work study program called slavery, transplant the passage started in the U.S. There are other dates around it, but you know, 1619 is what you know, some people said that's the one. That's the one. You know, and depending upon how hotep you are, you might be like, nah, really, when you think about it, you know, even using numbers is like, so anyway. But there is a thing that I think about in relationship to that, which is, here is a formulation of the sensual idea of bodies in contact. So let me you know, paint a picture for you. Imagine you are in a ship. Imagine you are not really supposed to be walking around much in the ship. Even when you have to use the bathroom, basically you have to get up and move across several other people, some of whom might be chained to you. And you have to use the bathroom in the ship's hull while we're sloshing around. Now, in this space, it's dark, so there's nothing keeping the cockroaches or the rats away, and they're all over all of this, right? It reminds me of this line from Public Enemies, Can't Trust It. Rolling in my own leftover. When I roll over on somebody else. So when you don't get up to use the bathroom, let's say you got the bloody flux. You gotta go, you gotta go. Metformin. That is happening in that space, right? But there's also a lot of contact. Body to body contact. So I began to think to myself, is Eros, this sort of dark, somatic experience, an appropriate framework for people with ancestors with passage? And so I began thinking, who might be a better space of framework? And I began to think of the Loire figure Erzulie who is also heir to the Gay Rouge, the red-eyed heir to the, where sensuality and vengeance are intertwined. This piece is called Eros, and while I don't get so much into the heir to the aspect of that in this piece, that's in another piece that I might show you during the Quanda. This piece does get at some other things that I think help ground that. You can read along if you like. My aunts and uncles, you know, they've heard me cussing a lot already one day. It's uncomfortable, even though I'm almost 50. It's still like it's a thing. But this one, there are other things I decided not to, which would have been very uncomfortable for all of you, including people who are not kin to me. But there's some things in this one that are, whatever. So just, that's what's happening. You know. Anyway, this poem is written after Akiva Oliver, specifically her She Said monologues, and then L.H. Stallings, particularly her formulation of the middle passage as a space battle in space. Anyway, Eros. The whole premise is flawed. The hull of wood prophylactic for aquatic wood. Can't you feel the motion of the ocean? We sing millions of mouths. We go deep and sleepless, except it's all someone's wet dream. We are and we is grinding. I'll coin grind. Won't Google that for fear I've made nothing. I'm not afraid of nothing except making it. I don't want to conjure rats, but they're everywhere. When I nibble on my wife's neck, how deep in her is screaming. Do you remember when we fell in? All the mid-tempos tell us rock. Can't you feel the motion? All the slow jams call us to grind. We grind. All the crunk slaps are fucking slavers. Tell me what to do, will you? This isn't about history. My junk bounces afford me even when I look over my shoulder. I will not conjure chains, but maybe the fuzzy kind from this sex shop. By chains, I mean the cuffs. I am not fuzzy about what chains are. This isn't about history. Outside, the ocean soaks the ship's wood on its progress. Whack, whack, whack. That's a wet-ass problem. That is the sound of hacked skin. And we talk about slave ships and leak sex tape. Any such sex tape probably is snuffly. The problem's not the wetness, all you fretting sexists. The Dafuna canoe exists. It's that the erotic isn't mine. As in nigga. As in Eros ain't my god. As in I didn't dream of Gerber baby on the lube tube. Slippery. The next wave gets me wet. This isn't about the future. Kill in some black mouths is murder. Murder in some black mouths is stabbing. Stabbing in some black mouths is pitching. Can't you feel the motion of the ocean? Swells pitching the boat. Set a course for adventure. Sweetest reward. I'm trying to get my genitals in order. They're down here in Ordure. Some of it's mine. That shit isn't strange. Packed in tight. Somebody says, get it up. I'm next on deck to jump too. I drop and give him 20. My man don't like me letting myself go. Slap, slap, slap. Bend over to the front. Slap, slap, slap. Touch your toes. Slap, slap, slap. Get low. I go down in the hall. I'm the candlelit dinner. I'm the hors d'oeuvre and the little something sexy will get slipped on in this romantic darkness. I am the dessert. Insert entendre before you come to consciousness. Can't say consummate without consume. We're grinding down to coin. They reach into their pockets and linger till they flip. The money shot, the rats on my face. If I holler, rats in some black mouths. It's too dim to know whose name I better say. A fetish floats a boat. God, ships is christened in his. Won't pray to that or pray cruise. I can't trust the mouth but spit me out to kiss me, right? Eros of fuckery. Goddamn infants want to screw everybody. This isn't about history. Thank you very much. I'm going to moderate my own agenda because that's really seamless and that makes sense and some intimate space. So if anybody has a cue or wants to see some of the newer work, which I can't really read about for reasons that might compare to see them, I can show some of that. But yeah, like whatever. Yes.
Something when we were talking about your working in class that came up that I think was very prevalent today, that you seem to have one eye on entertainment, while also using what you're using to entertain to speak of something much deeper and more profound. And I imagine that's very difficult to do. I was wondering if you could sort of speak on the intention of that, how that fits into your work.
That's a great question. So one of the major sort of themes in my work, people who know the work or maybe would kind of gloss off tonight, is the way that violence towards, especially Black people, not Black people who are especially Black, but just particularly Black people, is oftentimes conflated with spectacle or kind of show, right? So, there's this interesting sort of knot that happens in my work that is actually a long part of one of the traditions, I would say, of the African American aesthetic project of the 20th, 21st century, and even some before, is how to deal with the problem of spectacle related to your violence inflicted upon you, while the primary mode you have to address that is through entertainment, making spectacle. So how do you deal with this knot? Now, whether we're talking about Billie Holiday, that I probably don't have to say it, but if I said, such a strange fruit, right? Or whether we're talking about Nina Simone, Alabama's got me so upset, Tennessee made me lose my rest, but everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn! Well, when we're talking about Spike Lee with Bamboozle, right? Like the project of using entertainment, the very thing that people want to consume, to critique that consumption, is complicated. And in some way, in this book here, I put forth the idea that if you're going to be eaten, try to be poisonous, right? And I think that that's one aspect of it. But I have to tell you that I come from a family in which the arts are deeply respected and supported. I said, I'm gonna become a poet. People are like, okay, but it wasn't like, no, you gotta work at the post office like I did, son. There wasn't that moment. Because even at the post office, my father was a photographer. So music, theater, all of that has been a serious part of my family's history and trajectory. But I was also aware that in a lot of my performance as a kid, there was the ingratiating aspect of it, right? Which is like, if I do this, you'll like me. Do this, you'll like me. And then that bled, even when I wasn't on stage, into just how I interacted with other people. Like me. And so that thread, a lifetime of informal and institutional training and performance. Right? The performance of walking down a hallway, you really wanted to get where you're going, but maybe there is a white woman 15 feet in front of you, so you slow down and you do everything possible to make your body not look like a weapon. Right? That's training. Like that's lifetime training. I remember reading this book about capoeira, and they say capoeiristas and capoeiristas do not have to stretch before they play capoeira, because all day when you're waiting for the bus, they're like stretching and that. They're stretching all the time. So they're performing all the time. You're never off. So for me, those techniques, again, the ones impromptu, the ones informal, the ones formally trained, the ones trained in different kinds of institutions, I've had to think about how to turn that skill set from ingratiating, not quite to grating, but maybe abrading. That the smile can easily go from to. The hands that do this can easily go to. And you recognize it. It's like a word that you know, but spoken in an accent. And so when I think about that, I think about what it means to be a body in space. In spaces oftentimes where the exchange is going to be about entertainment, or at least the kind of NPR version of that, which is sort of like, what is the word? I had it on the tip of my tongue. it's a word that means edification, entertainment or edification. And so to be in those spaces, to think about all of this sort of vocabulary, performance history, and some of the stuff that I learned while I was here, becomes a tool that helps me find ways to protect certain parts of myself when I'm embodying the work. However, because of things like what you saw during the banter sections of tonight's reading, those things are not planned. Those things happen like in the spur of the moment. And so at those instances, that improvisational performance, that vocabulary becomes something that I can dip into, but it's playing directly with the room. It's playing directly with whatever energy is in the room. So it's collaborative in that way. But you know, it's always collaborative when you think about it. One of the lines that ends Sho is, stood I on that bloody rise of sweet body, there you is too. The land acknowledgement at the beginning. We are standing on a rise of sweet bodies. And I'm there. And so is you. Sweat it, let's.
So show sure and show us in the show.
Show.
Okay.
You have a unique way of taking current events, historical facts, and blending it by ripping off that scab that covers bigotry, racism, race, and all the other nasty, hidden, and blinded people tend not to want to see and bring it to light. I know you, I know how you garner some of this information, but there is something inside you that comes out. I wish you could explain that to everybody, how you take that internalized process and bring it out into the form and forms you can use in your poetry.
Thank you, Cliff. So you remember, maybe some of y'all saw the Marvel Cinematic Universe film, The Avengers, and the character of Bruce Banner is in the scene. He's looking like Bruce Banner. Of course, Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk, and I think it's Captain America says to Bruce Banner, he's got to fight these massive aliens, right? All the CG bloods that happen, and you know, Captain America says to Bruce Banner, he goes, "All right, Bruce, time to get angry." And then Bruce Banner says, "That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry." Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say I am always angry, because that suggests that's all I would always be. I'm always a lot of things, but angry and uncomfortable, you know, those are up there pretty high. So when I come into a situation like this, where the blessing of it is that I get to write, and then people say, "We want you to read that," where, you know, "We want you to come and read that." It's like, that's a beautiful thing, right? But it also kind of amplifies the sort of visibility and the surveilling and all of that, right? So in that moment, I can decide to pretend as though I'm not uncomfortable. And that's going to be a very particular kind of performance, right? But what happens if instead of pretending that this thing we're doing, like right now, and I'm even pre-COVID, right, that this thing is normal, like this is weird, like this is like this, I think this is objectively weird, right? Like it's fun sometimes, but it's weird. So like for me, when I'm here, there is this part of me that just kind of goes like, the entire time, so I'm like, this is weird, right? This is weird. And if it's weird, and I'm not, using that in some kind of normative sort of way, but if it's weird, then is it more weird if I do this? Like, why is that weird in this spectating environment, but not weird in another one? So for me, I'm constantly sort of thinking about this relationship that we got. We got a real intimate relationship happening right now. And so what I try to do in performance is I try to be as present in two places as I can. One is present in the feeling of the poem and what writing the poem felt like and why I might have written the poem. But I'm also trying to be present here with all of y'all. And there are some times where that becomes that not because I'm sitting there going, I could just thrash that girls. But sometimes it's because it's like taking off my wig. Like, yeah, this is what it is. Exactly. So I think it's just really trying to be present in the strangeness of this. And it's so layered, right? We talk about that history of performance. It's so layered. And being in a space where I'm with other people who are making work, who may find themselves standing behind a lectern like this at some point, going like, all right, this is what I did, this is what I'm doing. There is a study going on. I was talking about this earlier, that if we talk about experimental processes, we use that metaphor, then we also have to take the metaphor all the way, which is if you're doing an experiment, you're supposed to produce lab notes, right? My work are the lab notes. Work is the lab notes. My performance is a form of lab notes at the same time as the experiment. So I feel compelled to be here. That being said, before the pandemic came and sent us all to our respective corners, I was really getting to the point where I did not want to be a body in front of people presenting work for a while. And I'll show you some of the new work just because of the way I'm illustrating that. So I started making poems like, well, this is an example of one. This is a poem called That Loud Ass Colored Silence, Turntablism. And so this is a poem. It was first published as a Viewmaster. So you can kind of see it there.
What?
And this is the first draft of it, which was composed in line with the DMV in Minnesota when I first moved here. And then this is kind of where it is. This is actually 80 inches long, 8 inches wide, I should say, as a design. So when you look in here, all of this becomes the poem. And I forgot that Viewmasters can't go backwards. I thought that you could go like forwards and backwards with them. But I forgot they can only go forward, so I wanted it to be able to be scratched. But I was confusing that with those other things. Hey, bro, remember that thing where you take like a big yellow cartridge? Yeah, you put that in, you could like watch the movie like that, but then you could also turn back. So I was confusing the Viewmaster and that, right? Because I was like, oh, it needs to be a book that you can scratch. So you have to be able to go in both directions. But yeah, this is a poem called That Loud Ass Colored Silence, Turntablism. And I can't read this. And not in the sense of it is impossible to imagine like sort of procedurally how to read it, but in the sense that all of these different typefaces and textures, if I tried to render those in an oral performance, it would become deeply distracting. Like most of my poems might have 3, maybe 4 voices going, but I kind of keep it in that zone. This page alone has 7 different textures, right? So like in your mind and imagination, you can play the different textures, the different typefaces, the different images. You can play the simultaneity. I would still have to make a decision about which one I'm going to say, or just go, which is not the same thing as what this is, because you could theoretically make out this part. But if I go, then that suggests it's just gibberish, and it isn't. So I can't accurately perform these poems. And so I started doing lots of poems like that, so I could take myself out of the equation of performing. I'll show you something 30 seconds. It's gonna take 30 seconds to show it. So you can just sort of see how these poems get made. This is a piece of armor, poetic armor, a codpiece. It's called About a Thing About, 12-inch remix codpiece. Part of a series of armor pieces that I'm doing, sort of influenced by Rammel-Z, you know, and the idea of sort of talismans and all that kind of thing. So I'm gonna show you the process of making one of these poems. I have a video that's like a elapsed time video that is it's 10 minutes of work sped up to 30 seconds, but it'll kind of give you a sense of the process. Yeah, so that's 10 minutes of work, sped up to 30 seconds. So that software you saw is a software called Photoshop. Yeah. So those poems I compose in Photoshop. Sometimes I'll hand scribble kind of a rough draft, but yeah, I don't type anything into those fields. And that's really influenced by like Susan Howe, MF Doom, and Public Enemy, and folks like that. J. Dilla, of course. So, yes.
On some of those poems that you don't perform,
Mhm.
talking about that, and there don't seem to be necessarily directions to help the reader.
Mhm.
If the reader is looking at that, if you go there first, or here first, or here first,
Mhm.
you're gonna get a different sense of what the poem is. Right?
Absolutely.
Was that your intention?
Yeah. Thank you, Anjin, for that question. Yeah. I mean, so like I'll show you all this. So like, this is my second book. It was written, it's wholly written during my time at Kellogg. It's like everything from this is in that. And what I'm gonna show you all, which you might be kind of able to see, is this page. I don't know if you can see it, maybe if y'all want, you can pass it around. But this is a poem called The Black Automaton, and what it is, number 3, Work It Out. And what you'll see, if you wanna handle it, I know you might not want to, is that you'll see several sets of numbers. Some of them are written in red ink, some of them are written in blue ink, some of them are written in black ink, some of them are written in pencil. Those marks are from readings where I did this poem and handed this book to somebody and said, sequence the poem how you would read it, right? So if you think I start here, at this line, put 1 there. If you then go to this over here, put a 2 there. And then if I go back to the first line, put a 3 there. So this book was the book I was reading from basically 2008 to 2013, 2012, around then. So for about 5 years, I was only reading audience sequenced versions of these poems. There was never a master reading. In some places, I would photocopy a blank page, right? Not a blank page for the poem, but no other writing on it, and distribute that. And then that way, people weren't even looking at other people's markings of the influence. And what I learned over that 5-year period, and I was talking about this to the class earlier today, is that if you give somebody a poem that's sort of like an open field, no 2 people will read it the same. They move around and they make meaning by how they kind of trace their eyes. This could have been like an embedded neural processor, so I could just watch the eye movement. That would have been kind of amazing, the data to bring, I think. But over those 5 years of me only reading it as other people said it, I learned that people just, they go where their eyes want to go. So from that, I learned, okay, so that means that in performance, when I write new poems that are sort of like this, I can just do whatever I feel in that moment. But you get to a very important point, Ajin, which is that if you can go anywhere, then there can't be a sequence that you could get wrong, right? So you have to make every sort of space on every poem a kind of self-contained part of this larger whole. I call it composition by accretion. So I'll show you the end poem of this series. This is a series of poems right here. Well, it's one poem, it's sort of a narrative poem. All right. So, you know, those of us in the US who have learned, well, anybody who's become literate in English, who's trained in literate English, wants to start at the top and wants to move, you know, from left to right and then start again and left to right. So, you know, there's some hierarchy just because I got to put something someplace. But once that's there, I have to now sort of play with, do I expect a person to go this, or do I expect them to go here and there? I'll zoom in a little bit. So each part that I put into there makes possible at almost like a fractal level, but it's almost like the opposite of a fractal. Like a fractal is when something is broken up in smaller pieces that each are identical to the larger piece, right? So this is not fractal. So it's backward. So instead, each piece has to have some kind of integrity. I'll die away, oh glory. But then that has to say something connected to this, to that. And so slowly as like a constellation, it's a constellative process. Metformin. It's a constellative process. And so all of these things sort of contribute to working to create this much larger piece. Now, that differs from the poems from the collection called The Black Automaton, because in The Black Automaton, even though I wanted people to read it freely, and this was early in the process of learning how to do these poems, you could easily make the argument that, you know, the body text poems, you should start at that and make your way down. So I'll cop to that. But as I've gotten further along, what I've realized is that those poems that are what I call Photoshop poems, or just collage poems, I've heard that when people read those poems in classes, they read them together, not in a kind of, what do you think it means? I don't know, what do you think it means? But they read it communally, which is wild. Like, to make work that's composition is interdependent, right? But then have people's relationship to that work also be communal and interdependent was like the holy grail. I was like, oh. And so that led me to start like digging deeper into doing work like this. And you know, one other thing that I will say about that is something that a lot of reviewers have been really, really kind to show, like they really showed it a lot of love, have all pointed out there aren't sort of typographical experiments of my other work in this book, which is hilarious. Because the next book, which is called I Imagine I've Been Science Fiction Always, is almost all poems like this. so it's it's gonna be kind of a wild experience. But yeah. Yes.
So in your experience with
Yes. Oh my gosh. All right. So I'll give you a concrete example. Here we go. We're almost there. It'll be so embarrassing if that poem isn't in this slideshow. I think that's right. Okay, so we're gonna do it like this. Sorry. I imagine. All right, cool. One second. This is all part of the show, folks. It's amazing. I'm pretending to not understand how to use. It's funny. All right, so here we go. So this piece right here. So this is one of the armor pieces right here, but black it can't do queers. All right. So the problem with composition by accretion is there's no there until you're about 75% of the process. Because you're slowly building associations and hoping that there's a chime that comes. Now, some of it, I know where I'm going to start. I have ideas of what I'm going to do, but every time I find a new piece, a new sample, a new cut from the archive, that now transforms what I was thinking. Even if I have the precise sentence I wanted, the way it's laid out or arranged creates a different possibility in the shape of the piece. So I'll tell you a little bit about the composition of this. I wanted to make a piece of armor that would be armor for the chest and the back, right? And I wanted to connect that to the idea of like backpack rappers, right? So backpack rap fans, because it was about this loop, this idea of a loop, which is like true school hip hop head, like that's how you make moves, right? But I didn't want to like have a picture of a backpack on there. And so I had to find shapes that would suggest a backpack, and also have some kind of resonance with hip hop. So I chose the bass clef. And once I chose the bass clef, and you can see this is like from a label for JanSport. So now it's just port, though. It's like a sound port, audio in, it goes out until you get audio out and come back. Yeah, right, like that. So you get the kind of audio out down here. So when I found the bass clef and I hit upon that as an idea, it made me think, oh, I need something else to kind of amplify the shape of the bass clef as not just the bass clef. And so I thought about the golden mean, which is this kind of famous geometrical design, right? So when you think about that, one of the natural forms that has that is the nautilus. So I looked up nautilus and I looked up loops. Nautilus, nautili, one of the ways that scientists refers to the intestines of a nautilus is loops. So now I have these loops written in this document from the 1800s about nautili. Well, Nautilus is also the name of a jam by Bob James. The hip hop producer Ninth Wonder, who in the late 90s was considered a torchbearer, late 90s and early aughts, was considered a torchbearer for true school hip hop used loop-based production. In fact, he used a program called Fruity Loops. However, in an article, an interview from 2005, which I read back in 2005 in a magazine that was now defunct, called Scratch Magazine, which was like a magazine about hip hop production. Ninth Wonder was quoted as saying, every producer, flipping Bob James' Nautilus is a rite of passage. So that means that this Nautilus in here, which is connected to the legacy of backpack rap, which was Ninth Wonder's sign of what would be the most quintessential thing to cut, was also a Nautilus that signified this golden mean. I looked up Querus, which is the name of the armor, and loop. And I hit upon this text that said a Querus loop number 36. Now, this was the moment that sealed it all. Because Querus loop number 36 then rhymes with Into the 36 Chambers, which is the Wu-Tang Clan's first album. Wu-Tang Clan, the bringing of true school hip hop in 1993 and 94. And their main first single was Protect Ya Neck. So Protect Ya becomes the association with Wu-Tang that ties us all back to wearing armor. That's when I knew I was done. So you know that. Yeah, I love it. Yes.
So I think it's super interesting the way that you like source your words and just your content. So I know that you mentioned to us earlier that you like look on Google Books like for like phrases that you're thinking of. But like has there ever been a point where like you're reading something or you're listening to something and like it just like sparks a whole like individual poem, like an idea like that? Like has there been like that one thing that you're like, okay, I'm
my gosh. Yeah, I mean, like, so the easy answer to that is sometimes when I'm working on one of these kinds of pieces, I think it's gonna do one thing, and then it completely takes me into another direction altogether. But another way of that happening is one of the things that I really like to source is kind of panels from comics. So like, here's a panel from Weapon X, which is Wolverine, and I believe this is Jim Lee's art. So I took that and I put it in Photoshop, bumped up the resolution, but then used a filter that would amplify the texture of it. And so if I see something like, well, I'm gonna give you a really like literal one. This is a page from a comic called Little Jakes. And so when I was working on this very poem today, this is a gorget, which is a piece of neck armor, right? I came across a speech bubble from a comic in which a police officer is saying, I hope you're prepared to pay for the damage, right? So I kind of kept that in here. And this poem references George Floyd, the settlement that the state, that the city of Minneapolis gave to fix that. This is a thing that protects necks. So 27 million unit price per NGR. The weight is 929. Total price, however, is cheap. And so that phrase, I hope you're prepared to pay for damage, is something that the victims and their families would say. But it's also something that the state would say to the victims' families for rioting. I hope you're prepared to pay for damage. Jinx, then, is both of them saying that in the same moment. Like, I thought this poem was done like way earlier than it was, but every time I found a new poem, a new segment, it made new possibilities. So once I found that quote, I had to figure out where it was gonna go and who was gonna say it, and what does it mean for the flag to say it versus the money to say it, what does that lead to? So sometimes it's within the same body of the poem, it'll take a completely different direction. And I think about that like if you're doing improvisational performance, like music, you got this like little riff, but then all of a sudden the drummer just does something different. And I was like, oh, we're doing that now. When I'm building my crates for different poems though, every time I see something that I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to use that. I just kind of put it aside in my file, and sometimes I build it directly in that moment, but a lot of times I just sort of remember it and just let it kind of accrue and create more associations. That when I come down to sit down to do it, it's like waiting to do something. I mean, these poems, the armor poems, they're hard to do because basically I have to start over with a new strategy for each one, figure out how I'm gonna represent the different pieces of armor each time. And so it kind of transforms. But as you see, it's a very simple set of associations. So simple anyone can use it. But yeah, so I mean, we're going to officially stop, and I'm going to put my mask on if people want to ask me any more questions about things. But thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much. That's mostly outside, not very fancy. But safe. Wow.